Another Republican backing the former vice president is joining me now. Miles Taylor, who worked in the Trump administration as a senior Homeland Security official from 2017 to 2019, including as chief of staff to then DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen. Miles, thanks for being with us.
Hallie, thanks for having me, and I want to say welcome back.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So listen, ever since you appeared in that Republican Voters Against Trump video, decrying essentially your former boss in the administration you worked for, there's been a lot of reaction from your former colleagues. The president himself just yesterday called you a lowlife. Chad Wolf, now the acting DHS secretary, says that you left the department more than 14 months ago with praise for policies the administration has implemented. Now, he says, you're trying to get 5 minutes of fame by reversing course. You are getting a lot of name recognition from this. So what do you say to people who describe what you're doing as just image rehab now?
Well, first, I would say this. In Donald Trump's Washington and Donald Trump's GOP, this is going to be bad for my pocketbook, bad for me professionally, bad for me personally. So I'm not getting a whole lot out of this. But I will say, without naming names, because this isn't about my colleagues that I served with, this is about the president. But those colleagues that I served with in the administration know very, very well how I felt about the president, and many of them felt the same way about the president. In fact, I would be willing to go as far as to say I can think of very few people that I served with in the Trump administration that don't feel the same way about the president as I do. This was a frequent topic of conversation. But again, this isn't about my colleagues. This is about the president. His name will be on the ballot. And it's he that we need to be concerned about when it comes to a second term.
Sure, his policies will be on the ballot as well, including, for example, the family separation issue that came up a couple of years ago while you were working at DHS. DHS was involved with that, Miles. We know that. I sat in briefings with your former boss talking about this, defending this. You now say you strongly oppose that, but why didn't you speak out then as opposed to now? Why this moment?
Well, what I'm really hoping is going to happen in the next couple of weeks, Hallie, is I hope the American people are going to hear a lot more about this story and what was happening behind the scenes. Now, I will say I wasn't part of developing the zero tolerance policy. I was in a different job advising John Kelly on counterterrorism while it was being developed. But I did step into the deputy chief of staff role as the policy was being executed. And what I can tell you was happening behind the scenes is that Secretary Nielsen and others were saying, we are not ready to do this. We don't have the ability from a logistics perspective to actually prosecute people and rapidly make sure children are reunited with their parents. She was overruled in the interagency, and a predictable disaster unfolded. But Hallie, this is exactly what we've come to expect in a Donald Trump administration, is the tone set at the top leads to bad policies down at the bottom. Now, fortunately, that policy was appropriately halted. I think what's more alarming is that every single month after we halted that policy, the president would tell us he wanted to restart it, and not only restart it, he wanted to expand it and actually go further and deliberately rip children from their parents as a means to deter people from coming to the border. That's inhumane and it's un-American, and it's something we consistently said no to. And ultimately, it's one of the reasons why the president wanted us out of the administration, and I was glad to leave several months later.
There are Democrats, though, who will hear what you're saying, Miles, and will say, well, if you're saying all this now, where were you? Where was Secretary Nielsen? Where was this opposition? Not just with you and your boss, but with other administration officials who have since come out critically. Where was this years ago? So why should voters listen to the message that you're delivering now for Republican Voters Against Trump and for others? Why should they believe that you have some credibility here?
Yeah, look, a lot of mistakes were made in this administration. I was part of mistakes in this administration. What the voters don't know, and they don't know the full story of a lot of the things that were prevented, but we also fooled ourselves, Hallie. A lot of people went into this Donald Trump presidency thinking that the president's misguided impulses could be ameliorated. We were proven decisively wrong. The president's worst impulses can't be ameliorated. And I think what you did see was a lot of people resign from the administration because of that. Finally, we've seen more people speaking out. But frankly, this is the moment that voters are paying attention. If I'd spoken out a year ago, the president would have buried it. He is a master of distraction. But right now, voters are paying attention. They're reviewing the president's resume. They're reviewing his record. And I hope you're going to hear from more folks that have left the Trump administration very soon.
You describe a number of incidents that you found extremely problematic, including, for example, I know you've talked about this publicly, the protests, for example, where parks were cleared. You talk about gassing, tear gas at the border, et cetera. I'm wondering, what is the most, in the conversations you were involved in, disturbing idea or thought or discussion that you heard from President Trump that is sort of resonating and sitting with you still today?
We could probably go on for days about that, although I'm going to tell you one thing that just popped into my head, Hallie. There was a time when, of course, we were spending a lot of our days down in Puerto Rico after the hurricanes wreaked devastation down there, U.S. Virgin Islands, and other places. There was a trip that we made down there in August of 2018, and I remember before we went, the president said something, and your viewers are going to be somewhat familiar with this. The president's talked before about wanting to purchase Greenland. But one time before we went down, he told us not only did he want to purchase Greenland, he actually said he wanted to see if we could sell Puerto Rico. Could we swap Puerto Rico for Greenland? Because in his words, Puerto Rico was dirty and the people were poor. These are Americans, Hallie. And we don't talk about our fellow Americans that way. And the fact that the President of the United States wanted to take a U.S. territory of Americans and swap it for a foreign country is beyond galling. But this was a real thing. This is the President. This is the man who sits behind the Resolute desk. And these are the thoughts he has when Americans are in danger and recovering. I did not take it as a joke. And on multiple occasions, the president expressed interest in buying Greenland. And I'll go even further about Puerto Rico. The president expressed deep animus towards the Puerto Rican people behind the scenes. These are people who are recovering from the worst disaster of their lifetimes. He is their president. He should be standing by them, not trying to sell them off to a foreign country.
Miles, before I let you go, you alluded to, I believe, the idea that former colleagues of yours, people currently working in the administration, may be trying to retaliate somehow against you now that you're speaking out. I wonder if you could elaborate on that or what it says to you about the administration and the focus right now.
Yeah, and look, Hallie, for me personally, I can handle it. I fully expect the administration's going to come out and say the things they're saying, and the president will say he's forgotten me and never met me, and Mick Mulvaney will say the same thing, and on down the line. None of that's true, of course. What's concerning, though, is that they would use taxpayer dollars to do this. So I did hear from multiple sources that the White House liaison at the Department of Homeland Security was actively in an effort to try to dig up dirt on me. Again, I can handle it. I got a stiff spine, but I don't think we should spend taxpayer dollars for political purposes inside our departments and agencies, but this is part and parcel of how Donald Trump runs his administration, and it's also what we should expect if we get a second Trump term. This is how he's going to govern. This is why we need Joe Biden as president.
Thank you for checking out our YouTube channel. Why don't you subscribe? It's really easy. Just click on that button down there. And for more news from MSNBC, click on any of these videos here for the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more videos from MSNBC with our newsletters. Head over to msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up.